If you feel like you've been doing all the right things on your runs recently, but every run still feels like an uphill battle, pay attention because I am about to uncover what I believe to be the root cause of this problem. So if you're new here, my name is Prem and I'm currently doing the Couch to 5K running program. Today's run will be run 23, I believe, and we're going to dive into exactly how my run went and the lessons I kind of learned from this run and why what I've been doing recently isn't particularly working and what I did to sort of overcome the problem. So, run 23. The initial plan was to run for around 20 minutes straight and try not to stop at any point in between. If you've been following my other runs, you have seen that I deviated from the Couch to 5K program. So, if you're not familiar with the Couch to 5K, it's a running program step by step that encourages and teaches people how to go from running 0 to a 5K in a matter of 9 weeks. I initially followed that program down to a T for around the first 4 weeks, 5 weeks, I believe, and then I believe there was a massive jump, and I sort of deviated from there, kind of went to my and I sort of made my own plans in terms of what I wanted to do with my runs, because one of the runs that was planned in there, I didn't feel like I was capable of doing at the time, so I slightly deviated from the plan and sort of made my own runs. And then once I was confident and capable enough, I sort of revisited the program, and then I've sort of stuck with that ever since. And the plan was to run for 20 minutes at a time. And I ended up doing that, but there were a lot of problems I faced on this run. So I'm going to go into exactly what I think I did wrong and just explain why, if you feel like you've been doing all the right things and something doesn't feel right, I think I might know the answer as to why. So one of the things I've been doing recently is really paying attention and focusing to my running form, all about my running form, as well as my breathing, how my feet hit the ground, how I'm using my steps. I did a lot of research onto how to just make my running form better. I was over obsessing on what can I do to improve my running form, because my running at the time just didn't feel very enjoyable. I always have a lot of pains. The most common one that runners have is shin splints, and I experienced that a lot on this run. Heavy feet, just a general lethargic feeling, mood. That's what I felt on this run, and I couldn't really understand why I felt this way, because I feel like I'd done all this research. I'd been obsessing over loads of different things of how I can improve this and how I can improve that. And I start to get overwhelmed with all this information. And what I soon came to realize is that over obsessing over all this information out there, well, yes, there's helpful advice that can be given and you can implement, and it will probably make your running experience better. But I just started consuming loads of different, like, contrasting advice from loads of different spaces and people, and I tried to adopt that into my own running. And I feel like that kind of halted my progress, because I was taking all sorts of advice when in reality, what I should have done is just take maybe one or two bits of advice, implement it, see if it works, and then continue to improve upon them. But I tried doing too many things at once, and I feel like that's why the run I did today just didn't feel right. And because I was over obsessing over all these different kinds of things I could do in my run, it was just a very painful sort of run, because I was kind of overexerting myself. Like when I started out, for example, I went out too quickly because I'd recently discovered what cadence was. And if you don't know what that is, it's the amount of steps you take within a minute. And for runners, this can be quite important if you're concerned with your running form. And one thing I learned was that if you increase the amount of steps you take, this can sort of tighten up your running form and make it so that it can reduce shin splints and stop like your legs feeling very heavy. as you start to quicken up your pace a little bit. And I kind of went overboard with this, and I started out too quickly on my runs, and I was sort of over obsessing over this cadence thing I just discovered, and I tried doing it on my run. And because I was over obsessing about it, I started out far too quickly, much more quickly than I normally do. And that's why I believe I cast out around 10 minutes in. And because I planned to run for 20 minutes, as I got to around the 10-minute mark, I was completely done. I still kept going and managed to do the 20, but it was one of the most awful, just the most, I can't even find the words. It was the most miserable and just unimaginably painful kind of running experience I think I've ever had. And that was a combination of things. I tried to do too many things at once, and that was ultimately my downfall in this run. Had I have just started running out normally and just picked up on cues of something not feeling right and making a conscious change in the moment, that would have been so much more helpful than me trying to do a million things at once, because I'd learned about how I can improve my running form, how to slow down my breathing, how to ensure that my steps aren't heavy. I was thinking about all these things at the same time, and that ultimately led to my demise. I was thinking too much, like my brain is firing with all these great ideas on how I can fix this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing. And what I needed to do was just take a step back and just calm myself down and just slow down my racing thoughts. I got to around the 10-minute mark, and this is where my form really started to deteriorate, as I was kind of forcing myself to run faster because of the cadence thing I learned, which I just mentioned earlier. And for the remaining 10 minutes of the run, it was the most miserable, painful experience I've ever had, because my shin started to feel heavy because I was trying to do too many things at once. And my legs started feeling heavy, my shin splints were worse than ever. But I kind of let my resilience and kind of discipline get in the way. Like, I didn't want to quit, even though I probably should have, in the sense that it would have been smarter for me to quit because of like the unbearable pain my shins had at the time. My legs were completely exhausted, but I didn't want to give up. And that might sound motivational and kind of like an endearing story, but the truth is I probably should have stopped because I wasn't doing the right things, but I kind of persisted anyway. And this is one of those instances where I would say it's actually okay to stop or slow down and just take a minute to think before you carry on. And that's what I should have done on this run, and I didn't. And thinking back to it now, had I have stopped and just thought for a moment, the rest of that run could have been quite more enjoyable than it actually was. And if I wanted to leave one thing for you to take away, that is to not overcomplicate things. When something doesn't feel right, make a conscious change in the moment. And if you've been feeling like you've been doing all the right things on your runs recently, but every run still feels like an uphill battle, perhaps you're trying to do too much at once. You need to look at what is the most important thing you could change, just one thing, and fix that. Fix one thing first. And then when you're comfortable and you're happy with that, then implement another thing. And then when you're happy with that, go on to the next thing and the next thing. Think of it like progressive overload in the gym. You don't, let's say you're going to, I don't know, let's say you're going to bench press for the first time. Do you immediately go on and try and rep 100 kilos, or do you start with the bar? Do you warm up first and then you progressively, maybe you add a 10 plate onto each side? Now you're repping 40, then you add a 20 plate on each side. Now you're up to 60. You start very small, and then you change one thing, and then you change two things, and then three things. But you ensure that the first thing you do feels absolutely right and actually does help you. And then you move on to the next thing, and then the next thing. You do one at a time. If I just focused on improving one thing and implemented one thing in each of my runs, and I was absolutely happy that that thing actually helped my running and my overall experience, I would then go on to keep that thing and then also add in another thing that I could focus on. So let's say on this run, I was thinking about loads of things. I was thinking about shin splints. I was thinking about how my feet hit the ground. I was thinking about my breathing, my posture, loads of things. If I could choose one thing to just hone in on, it would have been just how my feet hit the ground. And a great way to do this is just to listen to the sound that your foot makes as it strikes the ground. If it's a plodding, heavy sound, that means that the way your foot hits the ground is not technically correct. It should be quite light. It should be like a sort of soft press that kind of like loosely hits the ground, and it shouldn't make a very loud sound. That's how you know that when your feet hit the ground, you're not heavy, and the steps you take are not heavy as you hit the ground. And what that will mean is that you're not heavy on your feet, and as a result of that, your shins will not suffer because you're running in the correct manner. So had I just focused on that specifically and fixed just one thing being that and been happy with that, and then moved on and focused on my breathing, perhaps in the next run, that would have worked out so much better for me. So I just want to reiterate my last point, and that is to don't overcomplicate things. If you want to fix things about your running in general, that's great. That's a good mindset to have. Just don't try and do it all at once. Just take one thing you think is the most important and fix that first. And once you're happy with that, then fix the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And then before you know it, you'll have fixed all the issues you've faced, and you will feel like a better runner, and running will just feel so much more enjoyable overall. So that's all I've got to say today, and I'll leave you with how the run looked, and I'll catch you in the next run.